Number 1. I killed an elderly man in front of his wife and basically his entire family. One night when I was in college, I was driving to get some liquor for a party my fraternity was supposed to throw the following night. I was taking a street I was very familiar with to get back to my house. It was dark, but the street was lit with street lamps. I remember that I looked at my radio for a second, just a second, not very long at all. But when I looked back up to the road, there was a man crossing. I didn't have any time to react. By the time I saw him, he had already hit the hood of my car and bounced off the side. I remember screaming and hitting the brakes, and the wash of horror of what had just happened. I'll admit I had thought about speeding away, but I pulled over to the side and ran out of my car to check on this guy. When I got to him, his family was standing outside the restaurant he was leaving, and they were all screaming and crying. He was laying on the side of the road with blood coming out his nose and mouth. 2 other men were standing with him trying to see if he was alright and calling 911. All I could say was I didn't see him. I was frantic by the time it had set in what I had done. I sat on the curb across from the family and listened to their crying in agony while we waited for the paramedics to arrive. I sat there and sobbed while the paramedics took him away in an ambulance. I don't believe I've ever cried so hard and for so long. The worst part about all of it, and what still kills me today, was that his wife came over to me while I was distraught on that curb, sat next to me, placed her hand on my shoulder and said, I was married to him for almost 50 years. We had a good life. Then she hugged me and said that she forgave me. After everything was said and done, it was ruled that it was an accident. I wasn't charged with anything, and I had one of my friends pick me up from the police station. I went down a dark path the years after that. I drank heavily, dropped out of college in my senior year, and had to move back in with my mother and father because I couldn't hold on to a job. Even tried to kill myself with pills. It was a hard road to recovery, which I feel I'm not fully recovered from, nor do I feel I ever will be the same. But eventually I got my life back in order. Joined up with the Navy and saw a bit of the world, and now I'm on track to go back to college and hopefully finish what I started there. It took almost a decade, but I finally start to feel almost whole again. I'm back to hanging with my friends and actually going out. So maybe there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Number 2. I gave my brother the drugs that killed him. It's been 4 years since he died. I know I'm responsible for it. He was 17. He wasn't very popular in high school, but he'd been invited to his first big party. I was excited for him. He wanted to try get some more friends, become more popular. I helped him pick out what to wear, told him what to expect and do and all that shit. He'd asked me to buy him booze to bring with him, but instead I gave him some of my weed. He smoked a couple times with me before. I thought he'd be fine. I dropped him off and told him to call when he wanted a lift home. That was the last time I saw him alive. It was about 3 a.m. when I heard my mom crying. From what I was told, he smoked and shared the weed with some people. They decided to go out to get food. My brother was the only one who hadn't had any booze, so they asked him to drive. Him and 3 people went out. During the drive they say he fell asleep or something. He crashed into a pole, he died on impact, and the person in the front got their leg injured. The 2 in the back had minor injuries. The police investigation was short. The car was okay and wasn't to blame, no signs of speeding, it had to be the drugs. I knew it was my fault. My parents tried to comfort me after I told them I'd given it to him, but I know they partly blame me. 2 things haven't been the same since. I fell into a major depression. I drank and smoked pretty much all day. I lost my job. My parents tried to help support me financially, but I spent all the money they gave me on booze and weed. My friends all disappeared after I stopped replying to their messages. It took over a year before I realized what I'd become. I started seeing a shrink. Got clean. I'm 2 years sober. But every day I still know what I've done. Every day I regret that decision. Number 3. I almost strangled my mother to death when I was 15. My parents broke up very early. I grew up with my mom. My dad wasn't really present throughout my childhood. My mother has had a drinking problem for as long as I can remember. She had a rough upbringing and could only vent her frustration when she was drunk. The way things went down was always the same. Around once a month she comes home late, waking me in the middle of the night. From then on it's a shit show. She starts yelling, spitting at me, beating me. Smears her snot in my face or on my bed sheets and makes me sleep in there. 1 second she yells in my face that she hates me, that my father and grandma hate me, that it's all my fault, and in the next second she starts crying and says that she loves me. Emotional rollercoaster. This always goes on for the whole night. I don't remember too much, but ironically the most prominent memories are the ones from when I was very young, maybe around 5 or something. One night I had to stand facing the wall the whole night while she screamed at me. I was so tired since I was just a little kid, but every time I tried to sit down she would hit me. Sometimes I had to do squats while pulling at my ears, making me look really stupid. Apart from the fact that it was humiliating, she made me do them until I collapsed from the pain, then she shouted at me to continue. A weird thing she did was she frequently pretended to choke to death in the middle of a rant. She then lay there motionless for 10 minutes straight. As a 5-year-old, I was completely in panic and had no idea what to do. I tried to wake her up, but she didn't respond at all until she suddenly jerked up and resumed shouting at and hitting me for not helping her. Luckily she stopped pulling that one once she saw that I got too used to it. As I got older she got more and more violent, but the only times I was really scared for my life was when she got the kitchen knife while fighting with her, now ex-fiancé. Luckily no one was ever stabbed. I could go on, but you get the idea. I never got any help because I was so used to all this stuff. And of course my mother told me to never tell anyone. Whenever I brought her behavior up and the next morning she claimed that she couldn't remember, said that I'm over-exaggerating things, or outright claimed I was making stuff up. Sometimes she apologized, I will never do it again, honey. I stopped listening after a while. Then it happened. She came home drunk one morning while I was getting ready for school. She didn't get much of a reaction out of me these days, and didn't seem to like it. As mentioned in the title, I was 15 years old at that time, and getting physically stronger than her, and I was used to the shouting. Also, I was basically dead inside. I was completely nonchalant when she started a rant. Then she said something about my ex-girlfriend. It wasn't really all that bad, but it was a weak spot for me, since she recently broke up with me. It was my first relationship, and I was the one who fucked it up. It was the last straw. All these fucking years of constant abuse and neglect unloaded themselves in one moment. Humans can be animals. It was like watching a movie from a third-person perspective. I had no control whatsoever. I screamed while grabbing her throat and squeezing with all I had. I somehow strangled her across my whole room onto the bed. My big and scary mother, whom I was always afraid of, wasn't able to fight back against my rage. Not one bit. Now thinking back, she even looked kinda scared. So she was on her back on my bed and I was standing above her, squeezing her throat. I have no idea how long that went on, maybe a few seconds, maybe half a minute. Everything felt so surreal. At some point my brain kicks in. Do you really want to do that? I get a hold of myself and I let go of her. Fucking mistake. She instantly grabs a chair and starts swinging at me full force. I mean, yeah, I technically tried to kill her, but now I just want to get out of this alive. I block it and it fucks up my arm. Then she fucking bites me in the very same arm. Jesus fucking Christ, that hurt. The bite later swelled to the size of a ping pong ball. Anyway, I managed to get the hell out of that apartment, but now I run the risk of freezing to death since we had winter, and I'm winded with nothing on me but my pajamas. I encounter a neighbor and ask him to call the cops. I tell them what happened, leaving out the strangling part, and after they see my wounds they inform my mother that I'm being taken into care. My mom makes a pathetic attempt of trying to put on an act, but snaps halfway through and bites an officer, gets wrestled down and arrested on the spot. It was honestly hilarious in hindsight. She played the victim and called me a traitor for calling the cops on her, but got out later on. She had to pay a huge fine though for attacking an officer. I moved out into government care. It was honestly cool. By the end of age 15, I had my own apartment for free rent, 400 euros per month to do with whatever the hell I want, and social workers that were pretty decent people. Kudos to German CPS. However, shit caught up with me, my depression worsened badly, I started to drink a lot, and later that year I tried to drown myself. That was rock bottom for me. I've had bad phases since then. There were nights where I wanted to die, nights where I wanted to pay my mother a visit, and get my revenge, and nights where I didn't want anything at all. However, all in all, life's been gradually improving for me. Slowly but steadily. The older I got, the more self-aware I became about my behavior, so I stopped getting bullied. Also, I learned to stand up for myself. That was helpful. However, I still ended up quitting school at some point. I realized I can't force myself to do something I despise for even a second. I just stood up in the middle of class and went fuck it. After that I tried a bunch of different jobs, but none of them worked for me. However, I found my true passion. I love making music, and I'm currently putting all my energy into becoming a successful musician. I no longer care if I might fail, it's really liberating. My relationship with my mother has been improving steadily as well. Boy, it was hard at first, and I made sure to let her know how much I hated her for what she did, but she finally, truly admitted her mistakes and quit drinking. It was easier after that. I could start expressing and letting go of my hatred in a healthy way. She really made an effort to better herself. I also apologized for what I did that day, and she forgave me. I wish I could tell you a happy ending to that part of the story, but sadly my mom was diagnosed with schizophrenia 2 years ago. The stress of coming to terms with what she did and the loneliness probably broke her. Sometimes I think about what I could have done differently. She knows that I still haven't forgiven her and am still suffering every day because of what happened. But I can't change that. I told her it needs time. It's been only 6 years since the day police took me. She's back in her home country now with her family, they're taking care of her. Thank God for that. The last 2 years were a huge burden. At one point she was so thin that you could see the shape of her skull, all while having that giddy delusional smile on her face. Horrifying.